Hello, in this video, I will be going over the IELTS test format, how the general and academic are similar, and how they're different. So if you have general questions about the overall format, this video is perfect for you. One of the main questions people have is whether they should take the general or the academic version of IELTS. Well, IELTS is available in academic for people applying for higher education or professional registration, and general training for those migrating to countries like Australia, Canada, or the UK, or applying for secondary education, training programs, and work experience in an English-speaking environment. Both versions provide a valid, accurate assessment of the four language skills, which include listening, reading, writing, and speaking. For the academic and general test, the listening and speaking are exactly the same. The listening portion of the test is 30 minutes long. You will listen to 4 recordings of native English speakers and then write your answers to a series of questions. In recording 1, a conversation between 2 people set in an everyday social context. Recording 2 is a monologue set in an everyday social context. For example, maybe a speech or local facility. Recording 3 will be a conversation between up to 4 people. It's not always 4, but the maximum number of people will be 4, and it's often 2 or 3. It's set in an educational or training context. For example, a university tutor and a student discussing an assignment. Recording 4 is a monologue or an academic subject. For example, a university lecture is very popular. During the speaking part of the test, you will sit down with an examiner, much like me, and you will have a chance to speak for 11 to 14 minutes. Now, there are 3 parts. In part 1, the examiner will just ask you about maybe where you live, what you're studying, and then just general questions about everyday life, maybe about the sky. In part 2 is where it gets a little more difficult. The examiner will give you a topic and ask you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. And then during that time, the examiner does not interrupt you. After the 2 minutes, you and the examiner will have a conversation about something similar to what you talked about in topic 2. These questions are about society, and again, they are very much related to what you just talked about in part 2, and it's more of a conversation style. Now, earlier I mentioned that the academic and general reading tests are different, but there are many parts that are exactly the same. For example, both tests are 60 minutes. The reading section consists of 40 questions for both versions. It is designed to test a wide range of reading skills. These include reading for gist, reading for main ideas, reading for detail, skimming, understanding logical argument, and recognizing writers' opinions, attitudes, and purpose. The types of reading for the IELTS academic include journals, magazines, and newspapers, and have been written for a non-specific audience. All the topics are of general interest, and they deal with issues which are interesting, recognizable, and appropriate, and accessible to test takers entering undergraduate or postgraduate courses, or seeking professional registration. The passages may be written in a variety of styles, for example, narrative, descriptive. You are required to transfer your answers to an answer sheet during the time allowed for the test. No extra time is allowed for transfer, so you need to be careful to make sure you give yourself enough time to move all your answers to the answer sheet within the 60 minutes. And again, there are 40 questions, and each question is worth 1 point. Now let's move on to talk about the general reading. Well, there are 3 sections. Section 1 may contain 2 or 3 short texts or several shorter texts. Section 2 is comprised of 2 texts In section 3, there is one long text. Let's move on to talk about the sections in more detail. The first section, Social Survival, contains text relevant to basic linguistic survival in English, with tasks mainly about retrieving and providing general factual information, for example, notices, advertisements, and timetables. The second section, Workplace Survival, focuses on the workplace context. For example, job descriptions, contracts, and staff development and training materials. The third section, General Reading, involves reading more extended prose with a more complex structure. Here, the emphasis is on descriptive and instructive rather than argumentative texts in a general context relevant to the wide range of test takers. For example, newspapers, magazines, and fictional and non-fictional book extracts. For the IELTS academic writing, you will have two tasks. Task 1, you will be presented with a graph, table, chart, or diagram and asked to describe or summarize the main points. It is recommended that you spend about 20 minutes on this part of the test. Now, there's a task 2 as well, and you'll be asked to write an essay in response to a point of view, argument, or problem. Responses to both tasks must be in a formal style. It is also worth mentioning that the task 2 is worth 66% of your final writing score. For the general writing, you will have 60 minutes to write the test. There will be two tasks. In task 1, you should spend about 20 minutes. You'll be presented with a situation and asked to write a letter requesting information or explaining the situation. The letter may be personal, semi-formal, or formal in style. Now, in task 2, you'll be asked to write an essay in response to a point of view, argument, or problem. The essay can be fairly personal in style. Well, I hope that helps you understand a little bit more about the IELTS format. It's not really about which one you want to do. There will be one that's expected, whether you're doing immigration or academic. So make sure you check which one you're supposed to do, and then make sure you follow the guidelines to do that test. Good luck in the future.